Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Akrinos Access. As I, your host, Eric Matei, President of Akrinos, are joined by the one and only Dr. Brianna Rhue, who we all know as an amazing doctor, co-founder of Contact Lens, writer, speaker, influencer, and Brianna's special guest for today's very special episode of Akrinos Access, that being Mr. Bill Rhue, who I suppose Brianna grew up referring to as Dad or Pop. What was the dad name growing up?
Dad. He's Dad.
Yeah, Dad.
Fantastic. Well, y'all, we've got a really exciting, inspired conversation that we're looking forward to jumping into today. As we're going to unpack this whole concept of community awareness and patient engagement. Really, what are these connections for sustainable growth of the modern optometry practice? And, I think to kind of kick it all off, well, Dr. Rhue, Bill, what do you say we kind of just share with everyone where all this started?
Yeah, so we were, last week, we were driving, my dad went up with me, I was doing a leave event where they asked me to come and speak a little bit on practice management. So we drove to Orlando, and my dad and my mom are snowbirding it. So they are now my tenants, and they are, living in my condo. We'll get into that later on. But my dad kept me company to go to Orlando for this event, and I invited him to the event. And then just to kind of see what I do, right? So we had like 30 people there. There were some dentists, vets, optometrists, med spa people, just more on that, cohesion together that we're all really up against this. And then Eric called me on our drive back, and we got having a conversation. Just, again, my dad, Bill Rhue here, is who gave me my start. In many ways, through entrepreneurship and owning a business of his own with my mom in the furniture business. So I reference that a lot because that's what gave me kind of my work ethic. And then here we are today, where we're just kind of talking about his way of marketing in the past, our way of marketing now. Where do those all come together? So just kind of that old with new in lots of things that we can make sure that we're benefiting everybody.
I love it. So let's go ahead and kind of kick this off now. And Bill, let's pass it over to you. Because, if I think back to our conversation last week, right? So you guys are driving back from that event. I was driving, where was I? Oh, that's right. I was driving back to New Orleans from Jackson, Mississippi, where I had done an event with the Mississippi Optometric Association, Jackson Society, the evening before. Shout out to Dr. Roya Attar and the Jackson crew of the MOA. But yeah, so we're driving back. And we started having this conversation that happened very organically that kind of, I think, centered around the question of, Bill, when you were growing the furniture business, and maybe you can also kind of put it in context for our listeners out there, right? When you were growing the furniture business, how did you engage and raise awareness? How did you market the business? So maybe for starting that, maybe you can kind of kick it off and just kind of share a little about your background and coming into entrepreneurship and the furniture business.
First of all, by driving out to Orlando with Brianna, that was one of the few times that I can actually get her by herself. And it was wonderful to spend 3 hours where we're locked in together, and she really didn't get on the phone too much, thank God. But then I also got to see what my daughter does outside of her medical office. And so to watch her speak really, of course, made me quite proud. She really does a great job in keeping everybody entertained and light, and yet gets across a really good message. So I couldn't be proud of her. But back to when we were driving back down is when you called, and we got talking about marketing. And I had my own business for 40 years. And when I have a marketing degree from Colorado State University. I always wanted to work for myself, although I think of each and every customer of mine as my boss. because they truly are. But with a marketing degree, back in those days, we really had 3 streams of marketing. That was newspaper, that used to be really thick and costly to advertise in. Now it's 2 or 3 pages. And of course, for you guys your age and even older, you don't even get a newspaper anymore. So that was one of our major streams. The other major stream was Yellow Pages. And back then in Colorado Springs, Yellow Pages was probably an inch thick. And if you didn't have one of the biggest ads in the Yellow Pages, ours was under furniture, then you weren't noticed. That was very costly back then. And then the third.
Wait, what did you spend on that? You said something was like.
Well, just my Yellow Pages back then was $3,000 a month. Now, what that might be in today's dollars might be $30,000 a month, just with that one marketing avenue. The other stream that we had was TV commercials. With that being said, back then we had 3 TV stations. Now there's 3,000, but we were pretty lucky to have 2 beautiful daughters, and they started doing our TV commercials for us.
And this is why I can't live in Colorado Springs anymore, is because I've been on the side of a truck for my whole life.
Right. The first time they both were really good dancers, and they were used to being on stage and all that kind of stuff. So I asked them, do you guys want to star in a TV commercial? Well, the enthusiasm was through the roof. And then the day of the first TV shoot, my youngest daughter, Brittany, came up to me and she said, now, Dad, are they going to have like one of those makeup trailers outside for us? Thinking they're movie stars, but
it was very low budget, Eric. Very, very low budget here.
Sure. I love it.
Really, and I've talked to Brianna a lot about this, is how much and how many avenues and how many different platforms there are nowadays for businesses to spend whatever marketing revenue they have and try and get their biggest bang for a buck. It's got to be terribly hard in this day and age to decide what is the best route to go or the biggest bang for the dollar. And, obviously all technology has changed dramatically since when I started in business 40 years ago. We didn't have a computer. We didn't have a cell phone. We had a pager. And then find a quarter in your pocket and a phone booth to call the person, or if you're going somewhere, you better have a dang good roadmap and a bunch of quarters in your pocket to stop and say, which turn do I go to? Look what we have now, which brings me to the point of it's unfortunate in a way as to how technology has driven all fields to doing so much more with still the limited amount of time that you're afforded, especially if you have a husband and family and kids and sporting events and all of those kind of things. You don't have the time anymore, so you're overwhelmed with technology.
Sure. That a lot of really, I think, well, for starters, it's really fascinating to kind of be in the time machine and think to when, in your peak years as you were growing the business over 40 years. And I think one of the first kind of key things that I picked up on was that you mentioned the customer's the boss. And I know in eye care, we speak of it all the time, right? That patient is the boss, right? Let's cater to that patient. Let's show up where they are. But I think something else that really should not be overlooked in this is that it was a thoughtful approach that was also diversified. And I think through that, perhaps now we can kind of kick this into the next kind of arena. And maybe Dr. Rhue, you can kind of, start to kind of assess and unpack some of this, and perhaps look at it through the lens of I don't know if you want to look at it through the lens of, sure, you've got Dr. Contact Lens tech startup over here, but then you run a practice and you are constantly having to raise that community awareness and maintain that patient engagement. So let's start to unpack some of that and maybe look at, what Bill was doing using newsprint, yellow pages, and TV ads. How does that kind of apply today? What kind of tools are we using today?
Yeah, I think if we look at the digital world, so again, seeing how he really planned over the time or over the course of the year on what his budget was. And he allowed himself to spend that knowing that it was going to come back to him 10x, right? So I think as optometrists, a lot of the times we're scared to make investments like this, but really the new yellow pages is your Google AdWords, right? It's investing in Google AdWords. Shout out to like Ronnie Daniels, who does my Google AdWords, right? That's an investment, and also your review page. So really the new yellow pages is Google, is just making sure your Google listing is up to date. If you do not have 200 reviews, just a takeaway, get to 200 reviews as fast as you can. That's really a marker for Google to really put you in that organic search, right? So if you also look at the paid piece of this, and by the way, their store was called Wall Units, etc., not like Apple furniture. So he was way at the end of that listing, but he knew that from A to Z, he had to stand out. So again, investing in that prime real estate and showing people what you do. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. So just again, make sure your Google listing has there what you need it. Then fast forward to the patient engagement or the customer engagement, right? Knowing that that patient has to have a seamless experience from start to finish. That's also what they instilled in me was that's who feeds us. That's who pays us, right? So when your team is too busy with somebody in front of them not answering the phone, where can you free up other time? So on like the missed call text, I was talking to an account for Dr. Contact Lens last week where like we use Weave, right? Where if you do miss a call, there's a missed call text. Hey, need to make an appointment, click here. We're in the self-service part of this. We all will, the target line will be open, but yet you'll go want to do self-checkout, which has 15 people in it because you want to self-service your things. So what can you allow what can you allow your patients to self-service? Need to order your contacts? Click here, right? So look at your phone time as sacred time to do the things that you need to do, like make appointments. And then the TV thing is just really like utilizing LinkedIn, using Instagram. It's just different. Yes, it's all sped up and it's just a constant, it feels like you're in this constant race, right? He gave his ad and it was in there for the next 12 months. He didn't really have to think about it. Now we constantly have to do new content to stay frame of mind, but you can do that methodically. So it's not about a race to the finish. It's just what is sustainable is what we were talking about, Eric.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the last piece that you said, so it was yellow pages, TV, and
Newspaper.
And newspaper. So this is a funny story. So he loves the newspaper. That's his jam. That's how he does it in the morning. So he decided that he didn't want to get the newspaper anymore. Well, we didn't realize why Papa Bear was in such a bad mood was because he wasn't getting his newspaper anymore, even though it was like 4 pages long. So my sister and I now pay for his newspaper to be delivered.
I love it. I love it.
But the newspaper, again, was really that way to stay in front,
Sure.
top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many great things that you toss out there. I think the first of which is to create the plan, right? And, Dr. Rhue, as from our work, from Akrinos' work collaboratively with Dr. Contact Lens, right? The Akrinos rubric is analyze, strategize, implement. It all starts with the data. So where can we find data? How can we assess it to optimize the strategy and then move forward with the implementation? So I really love how you started with that. Another piece also that you mentioned, and Bill, you stated this, kind of building on your approach was you knew that you were going to have the spend, right? So it was part of the budget. So let's be strategic with this though, and not go in blind waiting for someone to pitch us a deal for us to say yes to. Let's take ownership, perform our own analysis and understanding our business, developing the spend, and then staying diligent with it. So I think in the context of a lot of this, something that needs to be said, and perhaps we'll kind of now shift gears into maybe some application, and that is for our listeners out there that are all these different steps of the process, right? Whether they're the emerging practice owner getting that cold start off the ground, or they've just recently purchased a practice, they're really excited to own that brand, or perhaps they're an established practice owner entering the next phase of growth, maybe through adding additional locations. That's always an exciting milestone for any doctor as they grow. Or third, hey, perhaps you're approaching the phase out in the transition to sell the practice on, leave the legacy. Let's talk about the here and now. Where can folks start today, right? Because, Dr. Rhue, I know outside of our conversation here, you've got a ton of content out there. You write, you speak. You've got a lot of really great insights regarding all these ways to optimize the practice with efficiency through awareness and engagement. But really, if we need to start with a step one, so what do you think doctors can start to do in their businesses today to start making these steps to enhance that awareness and that engagement?
I think first off is being true to yourself. I saw that in my parents a lot. They were always true to that, and defining what success looks like to you, right? With all of the stuff out there, you can get lost in this rat race super easy. So start with defining those two things. What does success look like to you? Because it's going to look different for you and me. It looked different for my dad. We kind of talk about like, what would he have done differently, right? He was building most of the furniture. Could he have gone commercial, right? Or could he have expanded here? And it really starts with you trusting your vision for that, because your team is going to get wishy-washy off of that if you're not really defining that. So give yourself an hour. Like, it takes time to do this. Give yourself an hour or two just to sit there and let stuff fester. Turn the phone off, put your phone down, go into your office, go on a walk. Like we talk about nature, right? Nature deficit disorder a lot. Just start to define that. And once you do that, then you can put clear people around you to then lead the practice. So he talks a lot about, he was a micromanager. He had the shop, right, where he had to manage those. Then you had the store where you loved to be with the sales part of it. And both of those are a function. So it's like we have this practice in the back, which is us seeing the patients. And then we have this optical out front, which is the sales side. It's exactly that, right?
Yeah.
So he was making the bread in the back and then selling it or doing both. And he couldn't be in two places at once. And he, yes, put things in place, but that's also when he reflects is kind of where he got burned. So it's trusting yourself fully, right? And there's a book, 10X is easier than 2X, that can help you do that. Because it starts with trust, and it starts with, he even doesn't say the word delegation. He says that that's even a bad word. But because if you're delegating something that you enjoy, then you're going to resent the person for not meeting your expectations. So when you delegate, it's, again, that's his bad word. But when you're looking at what your zone of genius is, also define that, so then you can get people around you to live in their zone of genius. So when you're applying it in the practice, yeah, you're the owner, right? And you got to be seeing patients, but maybe you want to go to 2 days a week or 3 days a week, but you have to get somebody in there, and they're never going to do it like you. And that's good. That's an okay thing. They probably will do it better than you if you give them the opportunity. So I think just starting there, define it.
I think the one thing that she was able to accomplish that I wasn't is, like she said, I was a micromanager. If I didn't clean the bathroom, nobody was. If I didn't take care of the customers, and also by being the owner, nobody would. But in this day and age, I think she is, and she doesn't like to use the word delegate authority, but it is so important. If you're going to scale your business, you have to surround yourself with people that get the end, get the finish line. And she has been wonderful about being able to delegate. Now, with that being said, real quickly, that is you have to delegate. You have to put your trust, and a lot of times it's very hard to find somebody that will take the ball and run with it. Sure, we all make mistakes. They are too, but if it's handled correctly, they're going to learn from it and appreciate that they're giving some authority to make some decisions, which only makes the whole business grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it ties back to a lot of these themes that have been throughout this whole conversation, y'all, which is the structure of it, right? Because it's when you have that structure that then you have these accountability functions, and then you can have that high level of trust because you've set these parameters within which for that trust to be fluid and, see amazing things get done. And yeah, Dr. I mean, I think back to, I don't recall if it's previous episodes on here or other things you've championed, delegate to elevate. I know that's something that's always kind of stuck with me. One of your, one of your nuggets that you toss out there. So y'all, this has been a really fascinating conversation that I feel like could continue and go in so many nooks and crannies here as we're talking about the fact that we are all operating in an increasingly competitive marketplace. And, when we look what's occurring within the context of that, though, we do see, sure, the marketplace is ever more competitive, but so too is the need for vision, medical, and specialty eye care. So that's really where, I think this is an amazing opportunity to come together with Dr. Brianna Rhue and Mr. Bill Rhue for this conversation around community awareness and patient engagement. These really keys to establishing that connection for sustainable business in this modern economy, the way people like to do business. So before we wrap up and kind of send off, maybe some parting words, and maybe we'll let Bill go first on this because of just his experience, right? I mean, a lot of us, I know myself included, Brianna, yourself included, a lot of our audience, we're still on the front end of building these businesses and really scaling these things to their fullest potential. So,
yeah,
Bill,
quit.
what do you think?
What's
that? He got to quit.
Right. I'm quit tired now.
Quit tired.
Quit tired. I remember you said that. Quit tired. I love it. So Bill, why don't you share a few words? Maybe just a few words that people can take with them when they have to do the big things that maybe at a given point in time don't feel all that great. Or maybe you've just been through something. You feel like it's all piling up on you, right? Because through all the peaks, right? I mean, Brianna, you guys made the big Inc. 5000 list. Not only that, y'all cracked like the top 50, right?
Yeah.
That's a peak, but it didn't go without its fair share of valleys here the last 5-6 years. So, Bill, why don't you share what people can take away to keep their eye on the peak?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us on this. I appreciate it. I can just say a couple of things. One is most people don't plan to fail; they fail to plan, and to keep the eye on the big prize at the end of the fishing line. And you are going to have some ups and downs. In small businesses, I think the biggest problem is that of cash flow. No small business doesn't have that cash flow problem. The first people, of course, that always get paid is your employees, the owners. If there's a crumb left at the end, that's what we get. But again, as a business owner out there, and you all are business owners, look down the road. Don't trip over a penny to save $1. And stop and smell the roses somewhat along the way, because that's what gives you more fortitude to continue forward.
Love it. Brianna, Dr. Rhue, care to top that? Care to top the wise words?
Oh, yeah, right.
We talk a lot about this. I have an article that's coming out, just kind of me and reflecting on, and it all kind of happened where I was buying an existing practice. He was actually shut down their business, and he ended up renting out the real estate. So him again, seeing what he was just talking about, kind of the longevity of buying the buildings that he did when he bought them, right? It was like a huge point when he came home and told my mom, like she almost, I don't know what she did at that point. It was like, hey, we just bought the building. So I think what I've learned from that too, and we have an opportunity like this being in its second generation, him getting to reflect and then seeing kind of that transition is just the honor that you have in a craft, right? So how can you pass that on? Who can you bring on and mentor? So that's where I've struggled personally, and like seeing him with all this knowledge go, and not really passing it on, but in a different way. So that's still living on in Brittany and I. So I think the biggest take home for me for having this conversation is there's so many people that want you to succeed. So just find your tribe. And like you said, like you got to stop and smell the roses and enjoy it and not apologize along the way. So yes, we're moving faster than ever. And so it's even more critical that you take those pauses to get yourself back on track, because the way that you show up in that door is what's going to be reflected around you. So if you show up there angry and pissed off to be there, everybody else is going to be that way. If you show up happy and excited to evolve, they're going to be that way as well. So we're just a big mirror of those around us. So look in it once in a while.
I love it. Dr. Brianna Rhue, Mr. Bill Rhue, what a really cool experience. I'm just going to toss this out there. I think we should do this again. So we'll circle back and get some ideas. By the way, to our viewers out there, if you got any ideas for cool topics that you think would be cool to unpack in a conversation like this, drop them in, send them on over to Dr. Rhue, send them on over to myself. On that note, I think before we do go and sign off, for our viewers out there, if you want to connect with Dr. Rhue and just connect with her and meet her and get exposed to a lot of really amazing people and companies doing amazing things around eye care, or even just looking for someone to add to your network, add for your tribe, whether you're in eye care or outside of eye care, connect with Dr. Brianna Rhue. There in LinkedIn, very active. And if you do want to continue the conversation more one-on-one with her, I know she can be reached via email at brue@drcontactlens.com. And by the way, if you do want to learn about drcontactlens.com, head on over to Akrinos, because we got some cool things that Akrinos does with Dr. Contact Lens. But it's really far out to be able to connect with you, Brianna, and with you, Bill, for a conversation that I think is near and dear to all of our hearts, right? As everyone is striving to grow a sustainable business in this modern environment, and realizing that through community awareness and patient engagement is where those connections for that sustainable business are really going to come from. So Dr. Rhue, Bill, thank you so much for joining us on the special episode of Akrinos Access. So all of our viewers out there, subscribe to the Akrinos YouTube channel, follow us across the socials, and head on over to akrinos.com for more fun, uplifting, inspiring episodes like this, and a whole bunch of cool tools that Akrinos has to help bring your vision to reality. So wishing everyone an amazing week.
Thanks, Eric.
Take care. Thank you, Eric.